Jim and John from AJA had to go, but we get Tom. We got everybody covered. So any questions? Shoot.
Panasonic, I'd like to know how you can claim 50 years on your Blu-ray disc for your new backup media.
It's a, the design of the disc itself is not a standard consumer grade Blu-ray disc. Also the fact that it's in the magazines, the fingers, human fingers never touch it.
When do you expect 300 gig?
The engineers are saying mid-year this year.
How do you, it's in backing up, I regularly do over 2 terabytes every couple of weeks. It's not, it's like a joke. The amount of information to back up now. How would you spread that across the platters?
It stripes across all 12 discs.
Okay, what if one platter gets corrupted?
It would have error correction built into the software that checks thumbs to ensure that the data is actually correct before it actually finishes writing.
Okay, thank you.
There's going to be a desktop version of that as well, but it's the same cartridge.
Next
I
up.
don't care about audio, but it's still buzzing.
Well, oh, there we go.
The speaker's buzzing. I think it's the other one's on still. The other handheld is maybe on,
Yeah.
just buzzing.
There we go.
Yeah, there it is.
Perfect. Perfect.
We wanted to catch you talking older.
Need to the restroom? Who's up next? Any question?
I'm Randy Conrad, Magic Communications. I work in the interface of all this stuff, gluing it all together. I see a disparity of connectors on the back, and it's kind of one question to everybody. When y'all move into IP?
Soon.
Okay.
They're not.
Anyone?
You can answer that.
Thank you for asking the question. Because we're working with you and everybody else in the glue industry.
Yeah.
It is important because we saw tonight some 6 gig HDSDI, some 12 gig HDSDI. It has its merit. They're going from the camera to the recorder. It means only one cable. It's perfect on set, but in a workflow perspective, on the broadcaster's perspective, and in Randy's perspective, in every person who's involved with glue, you need to have some backward compatibility. You need to think of the future as well. So one place where we were personally really successful in the past few years that we're able to walk into a truck or facility and say we're for HDSDI, we just go to a router, we map 4 cross point, we go to a switcher, we map 4 cross point, and then we're able to press on it and it goes through. Same thing with Panasonic. So the idea is that when you're moving toward more than 4K, more than high frame rate, you have to look at the future. And the idea of developing, let's say, an HDSDI 6 gig or 12 gig, you have to ask yourself the question, is it going to protect me in the future? And we know that most broadcasters have been asking about IP connectivity. So yes, we've been developing an entire line of IP connectivity. There's some legacy product, and we're in partnership with many other manufacturers, many vendors, and there are some SMPTE standards are being developed. There was actually a meeting 2 months ago where you should have attended. It was a fantastic meeting. And there's a lot of work going into that, but it's all about standard. It's all about the fact that all manufacturers are sitting together and are making sure that the protocol to genlock all the product in IP is supported and so on, so that you can put an Imagine server connected with an Evertz converter, connected to a Sony camera, and so on. So it needs to all be established through standard.
Any other comments? Next. All that information and no answer.
Okay, I got a general question for you guys with your new color space, 2020 space. What am I going to see with the 2020 color space that I'm not seeing now currently? For example, tell me something that I might see that we don't see now in that space.
Right now, if you take a monitor, I'm not going to mention a model from us, and you were to look at it on set, you would see almost all the color of the BT2020. Almost. I'm not saying all of it. Almost all of it. And there's not much you can do with it, because today you're going to need to cut it to go to DCI-P3 if it goes to a movie, to go to 709 if it goes HD, to go to 601 because there's still some customers that are SD, and to go really, really low. There's not even a standard for the internet. So the reality is that we have all that space, we want to do that to attract more customers. Again, it goes back to the business decision. Is it gonna bring in more customers? The fact is that when you look at it in the movie theater, it looks pretty good. And that would bring in more customers. On a TV, the HDR television with a wider color space are just starting. They're just starting, but there's a big push. And if you look at CES this year, it was all about HDR. Every manufacturer had HDR. And as I mentioned, the consumer is driving also that requirement. So we will see 4K, BT20 television, BT20 television in the really within this year. And there's going to need to be we're going to need to be able to produce content for it. There's going to be a demand for it. So you're going to have to follow.
I guess my question is, what colors are we gonna see there that we can't already see?
In the green, you're clipped big time right now. You almost have nothing in green compared to what we're going to be doing. But that was the same thing of 709 to DCI-P3. We were clipped big time. The thing is that until you see it, you don't know it's missing. Where it's really going to hit you is how much it's going to cost you to color correct. Because up until now, if you're in the broadcast industry, you might not have heard of illegal color. It's something we know in color correction. You're basically having some of these colors that don't fit in the pipeline of HDSDI. They don't fit in the pipeline of 709. So if you only have one color that doesn't fit, you cannot just reduce the color of all the picture. You need to find that color, do a chroma key on it, or basically do a power window on it, be able to select that hue and change the color. So it means if you have somebody wearing a coat that is unacceptable, it's going to cost you $400 to $2,000 an hour to change the color of that coat only for a 2-hour movie. That is expensive. So people in the color grading world, they're suffering.
Well, that's the truth is though, with that, there are color correction tools that are free. So, you know, the change in color correction, I think is going to be one of the biggest things that we're seeing already. You know, we do a lot of work with, we do a lot of work in conjunction with Sony to, so that people can see what the 8K and and the dynamic range of all their cameras. So we've had to do a lot. You know, it's one of the things when we got into the camera business. You know, it was uncomfortable, to say the least, because we were all in partnership because of the color corrections. And to resolve color correction, sort of we have to deal with every single one of the camera manufacturers and then ultimately the monitors and all the display technology and the recorders and all these things, because so much goes through. I mean, when I worked at DaVinci, I think we had about 200 people that had a Resolve, and now 1 million people have Resolve. So they get it free off the internet, or they get a copy with the camera or whatnot. But it's like anything, it's like a scalpel. I could buy a scalpel to make me a surgeon. I have a free copy of Resolve to make me a colorist. But I think that you know, a lot of what we're seeing now, especially with some of the other manufacturers trying to make these high dynamic range TVs and put in different standards, and standards is the biggest thing. It's where all these things. I remember years ago when I was working at DaVinci, people would say, well, what monitor should we buy? Because after they couldn't make the Sony tubes anymore, everyone said, what do we do now? I said, I don't know, just everyone buy the same one. That way if it looks awful, at least they all look awful together. You know, and to some degree, that's sort of what happened. Most of the $2,000 an hour guys were buying Pioneer made some plasmas, but they were actually Panasonic plasmas. The Pioneer was OEMing that was doing something called Kuro or whatever, but then they ran out of them and they stopped. They were out of the business, and then since then everybody just asks the same question every time you walk into a room: what monitor do we use? And I said, I don't know, we use all the same one. That way they all look terrible together. But and that's part of another standard that we all need, because otherwise the unicorn colors that you're not seeing today are only going to be displayed if there's a display that can show the unicorn colors. And that's Sony's new camera, the unicorn. It's not easy, obviously.
If you compare the Rec 220 with
ACES is still much wider than BT 2020. So you need to see ACES as it's not a way to broadcast your content. It's not a way to distribute your content. It is still a much wider color space that you're going to grade down to BT 2020, to 709, and so on. Just one thing that Bob could have mentioned, there's one functionality in Result that's pretty cool where you can take a color chart from DSC Lab, David and Susan Corley here in Toronto, a Canadian company, where you're basically taking a chart and you shoot it with all your camera and then you press auto match and it's going to be done. The reason it's gaining so much popularity is because we are in an environment where we have less money, and because we have less money, whatever you can do to at least match your camera, then you can go to the artistic coloring, is a cost saving to every production. That is important. So there's going to be more things like that. And the ACES is so wide that you almost need to have tools like that. And the problem that we saw with ACES, and this year was ratified, it was the first year it was ratified. So if you go look at NAB, we had a big push for ACES, and people are going to say, well, you've been talking about it for 3 years, because finally it finished the ratification. So it means for 3 years we had high-end post-production that used it, it went really well, but most owner-operators said it's too wide, I don't know where to start, it's too much work, which means it's not for everybody, which is why we are applying lots, either on the timeline or in the camera, to be able to help you with that.
I'm not curious why all of you guys don't introduce ACES to your cameras.
It is a copyright, it is a pattern. Sony was one of the member, and many manufacturers here are a member, but you're paying for a right on that. And up until this year, it was not ratified. So even if you put it, it was not ratified, it could have changed, it could have actually disappeared. The fact is that ACES is a bucket. Again, it's a little bit like BT 2020. You might not fill it. So what every manufacturer does is that they're going to give a formula to ACES, to the MPAS group, and they're going to say, if I add this formula to my RGB input, it's going to give you something that is flat or that is matched to the camera. It does not mean you fill it completely. It just means that you're flat and you should match to the camera. It might be with less color. So that is a standard that is incredible in the power it can give you, but it does not guarantee a perfect output.
We have a firmware upgrade in our camera that allows you to do that.
Software to allow you to do whatever you want to it. Back and forth, yeah.
Quick question about power consumption on your cameras. Maybe it might be a little bit more directed toward Gary. There's special camera applications that I do, and I run into problem with the power. I can only go so long. Any improvements in that area? And I'm familiar with the other cameras other than Panasonic's Vericam and maybe some of the Sony's now.
Also, to explain the ASIC versus FPGA, our cameras are using FPGAs. They require a lot more power. The Alexa requires about 90 watts. The Amira requires 50, and we are working hard to minimize that power consumption, but it's still a fundamental difference in the components between the ASIC platform and the FPGA.
Maybe Tesla can help us.
There's a battery.
A new battery.
That we make.
Nice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, an article that's getting a lot of buzz now, and it's becoming evident, one of the reasons for shooting 4K is that your HD looks way better when you scale it down. Is that something that's helping to drive sales? Does anyone want to comment on that reason for shooting 4K?
To date, what we've seen from the launch of the Vericam is that it's the 4K sales primarily been driven by the Amazon, for example, Netflix. They're asking for 4K native. No up conversion, it has to be 4K native. So the 4K acquisition is more for future proofing at this point, where they want to make sure that what they have holds up 5 years from now. So everybody watches hockey, look at those replays back from the 1990s, you can't even tell the player's number or the name on the back of the sweater. So the whole idea with 4K is more versatility. They may never take that to air right now, but they have it. It's there. It's similar to recording RAW. People want to record RAW, but RAW is like the dog whistle. You can't see it. You can't hear a dog whistle, but there's a lot of information in RAW that you'll never be able to see today. There's a lot of high-end information that's not available to the human eye. But the whole idea is in RAW is that people think, well, someday I may be able to use that information. So that's where, similar to 4K.
There's a lot of talk about 8K right now. Again, it's, everyone's jumping the gun to try to get to the next best thing. What happened to 3D? I have a couple of 3D cameras if anybody's
Any other comments? I guess maybe the oversampling of yeah, kind of the HD picture and how it might look better if acquired from a 4K sensor. I think
From our side, I would say that what's been driving 4K is really sports. That's our core business. And in terms of sports, we've been selling a lot of 4K camera because when you zoom in on a soccer field, and keep one thing in mind, if you are putting your camera in front of the ice, that costs a lot of money. So it means you lost that boot space that would have been a few $1,000 ticket. So you don't want that. So you put the camera completely in the back, so you want to be able to zoom in. So it makes a huge difference. And if you have any type of display board outside, it's extremely important because this is where you're going to see a big difference. And keep in mind that all those stadiums, they're trying to bring in new customers. And how do they bring them? With new things, and that new things is a display outside, a better jumbotron, things like that. So for them, it's extremely important. So I would say in terms of sports, we saw a big difference, and there's been lots of calls this year, especially in football, where we're using 4K and 8K to be able to zoom in, to be able to say that's a good call or it's not. So as far as sports is concerned, 4K is extremely in demand. As far as consumer is concerned, they haven't really caught on to the fact that you can take a single camera and do a 2-people interview with a single camera.
Just got a little to add to that. I 100% agree with what you're saying. Yeah, sports is definitely a big area of interest for 4K. I've also seen high-end corporate where people want a certain look, or even something simple like an interview where you have a CEO or somebody that is high up in the company. I worked for McDonald's for 3 years before I joined AJA, and we wouldn't have a lot of time to shoot somebody that was high up at the corporate ladder. So they had 10 minutes, they were going to jump on a plane. So we would shoot them in 4K and then do our blow-ups and our moves in post. And that was a really good workflow for us. We also saw like high-end product shots. So as a corporate in-house video department, we were kind of trying to do some agency type work by shooting product shots, you know, the Big Mac, whatever you want to, you know, French fries, close-ups. So we're also seeing that, so beauty shots, if you will, interviews, house of worship we're seeing, and definitely sports. So.
I have a question for Sebastian, Architects. One of the new Alexa cameras shoot 3.5K, something like that, but you record 4K. I don't see why the purpose. You just feed the hard drive. And 2.8 is already amazing, so I don't see what the purpose.
There is significant quality improvement between 2.8 and 3.4. The challenge is that not all lenses cover that image circle. And you're right, the data requirements are much greater. For plate shot VFX work, it's very, very desirable.
But from to shoot 3.4 and to record 4.1, whatever, I don't see why. Because if we shoot like 3.4 and we keep it until the post-prod and we do whatever we want.
3.4 is not a deliverable format. So either you do that in post and have a bunch of work there, or you have the efficiency of doing it in camera and you're ready to edit essentially.
Winding down, any last questions? Oh,
Sir Ed,
no,
I'm taking more of my
that's all right.
I've always felt comfortable with, in the past, Sony with HDCam Master, and that became almost an insurance requirement. I'm still wondering if, I'd love to see Panasonic or Sony come out with an old analog or whatever you call it, tape-based mastering of 4K. I'm just wondering, is that in the basement somewhere?
It is not going to happen because, like my colleague from Panasonic has mentioned, the optical disc, in our case it's called the optical disc archive, but it is a joint project between Panasonic and Sony. So we basically have that project going forward. It's going to continue to increase in capacity. And the fact is that during the tsunami, there's many of these discs that ended up in the water. They were completely destroyed because of the salt and everything. And when they removed the cartridge, cleaned up the disc, they were perfect. So they have already gone through that testing about emergency and contingency plan and so on. And yes, through accelerated testing, they are lasting 50 years. If you're just looking from a business perspective, if you're using tape and you have to have a controlled humidity and temperature control room, it is going to cost you a certain amount, which you don't need to worry with that. You have random access, you can go get your footage directly, and like Michael mentioned, if you don't have to go directly, you can go directly to that file, not have to scroll, go forward and back. It makes a huge difference. So no, there's no plan to go tape, and I think that most manufacturers are going disc. That's certainly the direction that the two of us are taking.
All right, well, I guess on that note, on behalf of the Toronto section and all our guests today, I'd like to present our presenters here with a little token of our gratitude. And they happen to be in order. Thank you so much, Mr. Briscoe. Hey, Patty. My fault. Sheldon, Bob, Sebastian, and sadly, Tom, we didn't present, guess we'll bring John and Jim theirs.
That's all right. Thanks.
Yeah, in closing, thanks so much for coming.